Hi there, are you there? Hi, Renee. There you are.
And I said hi, but I know you couldn't hear me because I was on mute.
I'm going to keep everybody else muted except for the speakers.
Okay. Well, I'm just signing in early and I'll let you do what you need to do. I'll put myself on mute in the meantime.
Okay. No, that's one. Hi, Tony.
Hello.
I'm trying to figure out if either of you happen to know this. How do I keep people who are coming in and just allow them audio and not video? Can that be done?
I would have to say I don't know. I was trying to think of places that we've done that.
I'm thinking it was in your initial setup of the meeting.
Yeah, I did that, but you guys got in just fine. And I didn't make any particular.
Well, we may be listed someplace for this meeting.
Oh, well, okay.
Did, you have to let me in from the waiting room,
Yeah.
so. But
I can tell you, I'm so sorry.
well, you want to have some people come in, but you don't want them to be on video.
I just think it will help decrease confusion. I suppose it could be on video, but if they want.
I could tell you when I signed in, it said that you asked me to be on video. It said the host wants you on video.
Oh, okay.
You can block everybody from talking and just let the people that you want to talk.
Yeah, I think that's what I did. Okay, obviously. There you are. Hi, audio. Are you muted somewhere, Roxana? There we go. I've got the Zoom link if you want, or eventually I'll put it on. I'll connect it to Facebook, the League Facebook page. You're included on all the emails that I've been sending. Hi, Jessica.
Hello.
You guys know each other? Have you met before?
I know Jessica, but she probably doesn't know me.
I mean, I've seen you testify in committee many, many times.
Okay,
And I know Beth Moskock when she gets here.
And Roxana here is the president of the NAACP.
Hello. You're muted.
Okay, nice
Better.
meeting you, Jessica.
You too.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, sure, anytime.
Really appreciate it. And who else is that? Is it Tony?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Tony. Nice meeting you. I'm Roxanne. I'm gonna put myself back on mute and get finished and get ready here.
And we got people starting to come in, yay. Michelle, we're going to ask everybody to stay off video except for the speakers, just so it'll be less confusing. And you can go get your dinner and eat in front of the computer while you're watching too.
That's what I was thinking of anyway, because it's like, do you want all these spaces on there?
Yeah, exactly.
Why? By the way, you know you have Beth Hendricks on your name, right?
Yeah, I'm using her account.
Oh, well, that makes sense. So I'm the big M.
There's Beth.
Hello.
Hi.
hello.
Hi, Ruth.
Hello, how are you this evening?
I'm good. It's nice to be here. Now, I need to mute, am I correct? And just wait until you guys get started. Yes?
That would be correct, yes.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lily. I'm joining with Renee. Good to be here.
Oh, hi. If you'll be co-presenting, I'll let you have some video privileges.
Thank you so much, Beth. I think that'll go over to Renee.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Ruth, do you want just the observers, participants to be no video as well?
Yeah, just observers to be,
Names?
just right. I want the speakers to have video.
Right,
And
okay.
there you go.
So can you hear the dog?
Yeah. I can.
Can you hear
Yes,
what
I
I
could,
have?
I could hear it too.
Earphones on?
Yes.
He,
Probably if you
ate
just
dinner
mute. when
too
you're-
fast.
Okay.
He probably has a tummy ache. He does that.
Ruth, do you know if I'm going to be allowed to share, or is it set up so that anyone can share their screen, or do you have to make me a co-host to do that?
Well, I suppose I'll have to look at that, huh?
So if I try to share screen, okay, it looks like I can do that right now. Should we just try real quick and make sure it works?
Okay, well, I have a share screen for me.
We're doing
Let me see. Multiple participants can share. Advanced sharing options.
There we
So
go.
can you
Well,
see my
yes.
screen now? Is that up? Is that visible to people at the moment?
Mhm.
Okay, so this is Tony's slides. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure this would work. So it looks like you don't have to do anything, Ruth. I'm all set.
Okay.
Thanks.
Roxana, come back. I'm getting nervous without you. We do have a few more minutes before we get started. So just so everybody knows, as you're admitted, you'll be kept on mute with no video. So if you have comments or questions, put them in the chat. And we'll answer as many as we can in an hour and a half and refer you for more information. Yeah, getting a pretty good crowd here, looks like.
That was weird.
Okay, we're just asking for the panelists to have video, please. So if the rest of you could turn off your video, that way you can eat while you're watching the presentation.
Okay.
We will be underway here pretty soon. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the live on Facebook thing on, so.
Okay.
So Ms. Mack, I will just keep admitting people. If you want to go ahead and get started, my little computer here says that it is time, so.
6 o'clock. Okay, let's get started. Okay, good evening. I am Roxana Mack, and I am the president of the NAACP Pueblo branch. And I will be the moderator for this evening's event. My partner is Ruth Nierenberg, who will be doing the Zoom portion of the meeting. She is the president of the League of Women Voters of Pueblo. And we're happy and excited to be sponsoring our two organizations to be sponsoring this event tonight. Our theme for this event is redistricting. Where does Pueblo fit? And we hope by the end of this presentation that you will find the answer to that question. So without further ado, I will introduce our 4 panelists. Tonight we have Dr. Tony Larson. Dr. Larson is the Director of Action and Advocacy for the League of Women Voters of Colorado, who was on the commission which drafted the ballot issue Y and Z, forming the redistricting commissions. Dr. Larson has also been involved in the nonprofit sectors for many years, in addition to being a longtime member of the League of Women Voters of Colorado. She has worked with the Colorado Nonprofit Association, Independent Higher Education of Colorado, and the Colorado Academy for Lifelong Learning. Our second presenter will be Dr. Beth Moskock. And please forgive me for mispronouncing that name. I've been practicing on that for days. So please forgive me. I'm from Kentucky, so. So please forgive me. I hope I don't have to say that again. But she is a professor of mathematics, computer science at Colorado College. She has extensively studied the mathematical measures of fairness. The redistricting commissions are considering her results as they design the districts. She is also a board member of the League of Women Voters of Colorado. Next, we will have Rene Martinez, who is a familiar face to us down here in Pueblo. She has been a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau since 2019 of January. She covers 18 southern and southeastern Colorado counties to include Pueblo. And she will talk about what is expected to happen with the data that drives this project. And lastly, we have Jessica Shipley. She is the staff director of the Colorado Independent Redistricting Commissions. She is a staff director of the Colorado Independent well, I just said that. Ms. Shipley usually works on a variety of issues for the Colorado General Assembly to include civil law, criminal justice, education, elections, state and local government, transportation, and redistricting. Jessica has worked in the public sector for 22 years. So without further ado, I do want to let everyone know that Ruth will be telling us about the technical component of our event this evening before our presenters start.
Okay, as you're admitted, you'll be kept on mute with no video. You've probably figured that out by now. If you have any comments or questions, put them in the chat. We will answer as many as we can in an hour and a half and refer you for more information. The chat box will also have a link to a doodle poll being put together by Michelle Gardner, who is a consultant for the commission, and I have seen her join this presentation tonight, so that's great. She will add questions to the poll as ideas come forth from this meeting. After the meeting, please go to the doodle poll and let your opinion be known. So that's about it for now. Thanks.
Okay.
Carry on.
Hey, well, thank you, Ruth. So we'll go on and get started. Without further ado, I will have Dr. Toni Larson first come up, and she will tell us about the ballot initiatives, Y and Z, and why they were started and how they play into the redistricting that's going on right now. Dr. Larson.
Thank you, thank you. Beth, do you want to put up the slides? Thank you. Okay, so this is what I am going to be speaking about. It's sort of the history of what has been going on. Next. So we have worked on, obviously, many of you already know that we have the proposals Y and Z, and they were passed unanimously by the state legislature to put them on the ballot, which was really a coup. And then the voters voted for both of them, and around 71% of the voters approved of them. So we do know what apportionment is. That's the piece that we have now know about. The federal government apportions our congressional delegation, and we now have another person who will be serving us in Congress. And then in the state, we redistrict the 8 different districts, meaning that we have to put together 8 different groupings that meet certain criteria. And we will be doing that hopefully before too much longer. So we also have been watching the commissions. The commissions have been chosen, and I will speak to that shortly about how they are chosen. And I want to make one comment. When you finish hearing this, you're not necessarily going to know what's going to happen to Pueblo. That's up to the 2 commissions, and they will be doing a lot of work between now and when they are going to have the maps done, which unfortunately have been delayed. And I'm sure the census people will talk about that. So we've had one controversy so far. We had chairman of the Congressional Commission who some people were very happy with him being chair. And so he is still on the commission, but he is no longer the chair. So this is not dull. There's a lot of interesting things that are going on, and people are working on various projects that underlie what needs to be done as far as drawing the maps. Next. Okay, so this is the composition of the independent commissions. The independent commissions have 12 people on them, both of them, and I'm saying that there are two of them. We had to have two of them, and I don't know how familiar you are with the title board structure, but you can only put a single subject on the ballot. And the title board decided that Congressional Commission and Legislative Commission were two different subjects and needed to be handled separately. So that's why there are two commissions. So the Congressional Commission, there are limitations on who can be on the commission. First of all, there are 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 4 unaffiliated people, voters, who are on each of the commissions. So for the congressional one, a candidate in a federal election in the last 5 years cannot be on the commission. Somebody who has worked on a congressional campaign in the last 5 years also cannot be on a commission. And then for the legislative one, and maybe my expert and the commissions can tell me, I thought a candidate was in the last 3 years, but maybe it's 5 years. So don't quote on that one yet. I got to find out the answer to that. And then if you're paid by a legislative campaign in the last 3 years, you cannot serve on a commission. So you cannot serve on a commission if you're an elected official, party official, or party employee within the last 3 years, an elected official at the federal, state, county, and municipal level within the last 3 years, a current member of the other independent commission, and a registered professional lobbyist within the last 3 years. And I particularly like that one because the word professional sets us apart from volunteer. And so if you are a volunteer lobbyist, you can serve on one of the commissions. I'm not sure that anybody is, but it's possible. When we were deciding all this, and yes, I was a part of the group that was writing this, I did some of the background work kind of thing. I think we had Republicans and Democrats and unaffiliated, and we had all different kinds of people being involved in the writing of the two proposals. And in my opinion, I think it is the most democratic process I have ever been involved with. I am very proud of the whole situation and how we handle things. And I'm certain it's going to work just fine. There'll be a little glitch here and there, but generally this is going to be a very good process, a bit complicated, but a very good process. Next. So this is how the people on the commission are chosen. So people have to apply, and their applications are run by the Secretary of State's office to make sure that they're voters, and there are a couple of other things that to make sure that their application is what it should be. And then 300 Democrats and 450 unaffiliated and 300 Republicans are put in pools. And for the Democrats and the Republicans, that's winnowed down to 50 each. And then they're sort of, they're drawn out of the hat. It's like playing bingo. They get their name. And I watched that process, and there were a couple of people who were either in the same district as somebody else. And so we're trying to get as many different districts, all the districts actually represented as possible, and a couple of other things as well as criteria for that. So then we ended up with a certain number of people, and the unaffiliated people, most of the process there is done by the courts. So we ended up with 6 people for each commission. And then there were 6 more to be appointed, and the leadership of the parties was able to appoint those, 4 of those, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and then the court pick the other two. All right, next. So the next thing that we have to do is select the maps, and there's a process. There are preliminary maps that will be considered by the public. There are lots of public comments that go on. They have to have a minimum of 22 public hearings, and the public hearings have to be in each of the current congressional districts around the state. They can be in person or they can be by a electronic process. And at least 10 commissioners must attend each of these meetings. And having people have input into the maps is particularly important. And if you were to go to the webpage for the Colorado Commissions, you would find information about when the meetings are, the training process for helping people draw the maps and what goes into drawing the maps. It's a very interesting process, and I would, sometimes it's a little tedious because it's long and there are lots of comments that have to be made and particular points that have to be made. But generally, they're really kind of fun to watch. So, and the public comments are posted on the website as well. So there's a lot of information there. And I think the webpage, the address was just posted in the chat. You can just type in also Independent Commissions, Colorado. So next. So these are the rules, the things that have to be considered for when they're drawing the maps. Population is first and foremost. The districts have to be as nearly the same in number as possible. And since we've increased population, and also because the US has increased population, there will be more people represented by each congressperson. I'm speaking mostly about Congress because it, in my mind anyhow, it's a little bit simpler than the legislature. And maybe somebody else will pick up the legislature. So the composition has to be composed of contiguous geographic areas. So that's to try to get away from the, the main part of the district being added onto with maybe a thumb or something like that. It's to get away from that kind of thing. So we won't have that gerrymandering process that we've had in the past. It has to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. And we actually put that in the legislation just in case at the federal level they decide to change the Voting Rights Act. We wanted the wording that's currently in the act to be in our proposal in Colorado. You have to preserve or try to the extent possible communities of interest. So that could be school districts, it could be water basins, it could be transportation areas. There are lots of different kinds of communities of interest. And that's something that we as citizens could be doing, is to try to look at and to decide what our communities of interest are where we live and see if we can't develop something around that. And then compactness, again, so that things don't squirt out here and there. They need to be as much a ball or a square as possible. And then we have to maximize the number of politically competitive districts. And that's something that Beth, I think, will talk about, is competition. Next. And I've mentioned the communities of interest. And again, this is something that's being worked on as far as what are the criteria for communities of interest. Next. I'm going a little fast because I'm running out of time. Okay, and this is the organizing community of interest. I mentioned this, or I alluded to it, that again, you can pull your neighbors together and see what kinds of things that they think are of community of interest. You can draw your own maps and you submit them to the commissions. There's a lot of public attention to what is going on with this. Next. Is anybody else having a problem with sound? I don't see, somebody's having problems. So the final maps, after the commission holds its hearings on the preliminary map, the staff must prepare additional maps addressing comments as possible. The commissions can adopt standards and guidelines for staff to follow when developing, okay, somebody said there's no problem there, developing staff maps. The commissioners can request a public hearing that on the staff maps and additional maps that will be prepared by the staff with input from the commission and from the public. The final map can be sent at any time. It can be the first map, can be the second map, the third map. The commission must adopt a final map and submit it to the Colorado Supreme Court. And if they do not, then the Supreme Court will have to step in. There are at least 8 of the 12 commissioners have to vote for the final map. And at least 2 of the 8 have to be unaffiliated. And again, this was to try to prevent the parties taking over or and leaving the unaffiliated a bit in the dust, if you will. So the final map, it has to have those, it has to be approved by that number of people. Next. And we've been having a little problem because of the data has been set back because of COVID and a couple of other things. Colorado has a problem because we put the dates for having certain projects or tasks done, and it's in the Constitution. The legislature has passed legislation or about to, and they also drew up a resolution and an interrogatory to ask the Supreme Court if they could make some adjustments. Next. I think I've mentioned this not in super detail, but again, we've got some timing issues in the census. People will probably talk about this next. And I think I'll skip that. I'm assuming that my time is up, so I think I will just stop here and Beth can take over.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Larson, for that presentation. I know that Colorado is ahead of the game, ahead of many states with the passage of the ballot issues of Y and Z and the creation of the 2 commissions, which I feel are very important to eliminate any gerrymandering that may come about. So I am excited about that, and that Colorado is leading the way for other states to follow. Next we have, and if you have any questions for Dr. Larson in reference to the ballot issues, Y and Z, or anything that she just presented, please put those questions in the chat. And we hope to get to those questions at the end of the presentation of our panelists. Next, we will have Dr. Beth. I'm just going to say Dr. Beth, but Dr. M, please forgive me. I mean no disrespect. I just don't want to mess up the name. So
that's wonderful. My students call me Dr. Beth.
Okay, Dr. Beth. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Beth.
Thank you very much, Roxana. I'm just gonna go ahead and share another presentation here, just to keep track of what's going on. Thank you very much for having me here. I am just really happy to be sharing with you today and hearing questions and sort of getting a sense of what's important to you all. I'm a professor of mathematics, and I'm also on the board of League of Women Voters of Colorado, as you heard. And I just wanted to share with you a few things to think about how math and data can be really important in this process. So what are we thinking about here? Well, we're going to be talking about redistricting and representation, obviously. And it turns out that the numbers really matter when it comes to things like getting equal representation. So if you have your districts and you were to create them, and let's say you had one district that had more people in it than the other district, what we can see is that from this little graphic on the right-hand side here, that district that has more people in it than it should each person in that district is going to get less representation than they should. And so thinking carefully about numbers and counting people and keeping track of various other very data-centered things are going to be essential to fairness. And I just want to talk a few ways about a few different ways in which that's true. Okay, so some of the things that Tony mentioned are going to show up here. I just like to sort of, bounce a few ideas off of you on how data and math really matters here. So let's look at a few of the things that she mentioned that are in amendments Y and Z to try and ensure fairness. Okay, so equal population, which I just mentioned, that's super important to fairness, and it requires counting people accurately at a very fine-grained level so that we can figure out when we draw the lines, what are the populations inside those lines? Fairness under the Voting Rights Act of 1965 means that we need really good data about the demographics at a very, again, fine-grained level, so that we can know whether whether there is a sufficient population of a group that's protected by the Voting Rights Act that we should create opportunity districts. And so we really need to know where everybody lives and some information about those people. So the compactionist requirement that Tony mentioned, that requires having some way to measure compactness, like having the district be sort of stuck together in one clump. And the way the law has done this traditionally has been in measuring the perimeter of the districts. Okay, so that's going to be very much a quantitative question. Competitiveness is required by amendments Y and Z. And so that we're going to need to figure out a good way to define it, which is going to involve some math and a lot of data in studying elections that have happened in the past and figuring out when does it actually happen that a prospective district is likely to change hands within the next 10 years. So this is a very data-centric process too. And of course, one final requirement of amendments Y and Z is that the districts are not allowed to favor any party. So we need to figure out how we can measure partisan bias and figure out how to understand what's normal for a state and be able to identify when that partisan bias is showing up. So my research group, which I'll just show you real quick, this is what we do, is try and come up with quantitative methods for understanding basically all of these things. So the people on the bottom are Jen Cleland, who's a professor of mathematics at CU Boulder, Hayla Colgate, who's a graduate student in mathematics at the University of Wisconsin now, Daryl DeFord, who's a professor at Washington State University. There's me and my colleague Flavia Sancier Barbosa, who's a statistician with our group. And on top, you see a lot of the many students who have worked with us. So this has been a huge collaborative project, and we have a lot more people involved this summer. So it's an ongoing research agenda for us. Okay, so we do a lot of things. So to speak to some of that equal population and the other population-oriented questions, we do things like see, okay, well, let's say if you were going to draw a map with preliminary census data, how closely could we expect those population guesses to model the actual populations in the state at various geographic levels? And so what you see here is a map that my research group made to try and understand how far off your population estimates might be if you were using some of the currently available data to try and guess how many people there are in each precinct in the state. So that I won't talk much about that though. Competitiveness. This is some graphics that my group made that look at the districts in the last decade and look at how many of them had election results that were between 45 and 55% for both Democrats and Republicans. And then how many of those districts changed hands over the course of that decade. So trying to understand, like, okay, how can we use data to really get our hands on what competitiveness means? Okay, but here's the idea I want to talk about today for just a few minutes to try and get the big idea across. How are we going to be able to understand partisan bias? There's a pretty recent mathematical technique that's been developed called Ensemble Analysis that's become really important in this conversation. Mathematicians were part of the argument in Rucho versus Common Cause, and also in the state level cases that came out of that, and in other states that have sometimes successfully and sometimes unsuccessfully tried to stop gerrymandered maps from being used. So this is not a really common technique in the general conversation, but I think I can explain it pretty quickly so that we can understand why it might be important in what we have going forward here. So it's pretty recent, like I said, it comes from 2013, and a professor at Duke developed this with an undergraduate research student. The basic idea is that you make thousands and thousands and maybe millions of random redistricting plans that have equal population and are viable in other ways. They have contiguous districts, they can be relatively compact. You can put a lot of realistic constraints on these, but you create them randomly with no partisan bias. You then use real voting data to sort of determine the outcome of elections with these random district lines, and you see what happens under these thousands or millions of plans. And what this does is kind of gives a picture for what's normal for the state when you draw maps without partisan bias. So then you take a map that you're considering and you maybe compare it to this histogram, to this profile of like how likely different outcomes are. What you see with your prospective map is very far from what's normal for the state, that's a good identifier that there's some partisan bias showing. Okay, so I just wanted to do a really quick demo so you get the idea. Like I can say all that, but like how does it really work? So this is a toy example. Imagine that we have 100 voters that vote in two parties, the orange and the pink party. In realistic data, we would have the boxes would represent precincts, and we would know at the precinct level how people voted in each precinct, but we wouldn't know at the individual level, of course. But it's simpler if we just think of these as being 100 voters and we know how they voted. So we need to divide this space up into 10 districts with 10 voters in each district for equal population. So we might think that the orange districts or the orange party, since there's 40 orange voters, we might think that they, to be fair, would win 4 of these districts. Okay, but it turns out that if we try it in a few different ways that seem pretty fair, so for example, just cutting it into rectangles like that, what we end up with is 2.5 seats for orange. And how do you get a half seat? Well, I'm counting it as a half seat whenever you have a tie, 5 and 5. If you cut it the other way, you can end up with 1.5 seats for orange, which again is just sort of a different outcome that comes about by unbiased map drawing. You can try a little bit and get 4 seats for orange. And if you really get to gerrymandering, you can get 6 seats for orange. And that is using the famous processes of cracking and packing. Right? Cracking the voters from the opposing party into large minorities in many different districts that you're going to win, or packing those voters into huge majorities in districts that you know you're going to lose. Okay, so if I did this 100,000 times in 3 different phases, it turns out that the frequency of different outcomes kind of falls into a regular pattern. We see that the 1.5 seats isn't the most common outcome, but it's kind of a normal outcome. It's in the middle of the fat part of this curve, whereas 6 seats is way out there, and that is like clearly the result of gerrymandering. So what we can see is that there's a range of valid outcomes that make a lot of sense. 2.5 seats is the most likely, even though it's not proportional and what we initially maybe thought was fair, it happens without any partisan bias. 1.5 seats, again, is not most likely, but it's not an outlier. But this 6-seat plan, this should be flagged as probably gerrymandering. Okay, so House districts in Colorado, I'll just very quickly show you some pictures of what my research group worked on. We had 7 seats for the last 10 years here. And we generated 2 million maps that were preserving counties as much as possible and that were compact as much as possible and had equal population. So those are just a couple examples that you see there. And when we made the histogram of the outcomes using real election data, we saw this. 4 seats was the most likely outcome, and it was what we got with the actual election data. That's what actually happened for our districts. 3 seats was a very possible outcome, but 4 seats was totally normal. So what we saw was like no real evidence of partisan gerrymandering in the last round. We can do the same thing for the state house. This is a more is going to be a less extreme, like large set of maps, because this is just a demo of what we can do. So if you make some random maps for the state house, you see a picture like this. We saw that 41 seats was the most common outcome. And again, this is what the real election data did. So again, this can't say that the people who drew the maps didn't have any intent to gerrymander, but it can say that it's not having an effect as of 2018. Okay, so that's all I want to tell you today. There's a lot going on. Here's a couple of resources for you that I can put in the chat if you want to draw your own maps, if you want to learn more about what we do, and also my email, just in case you'd like to hear a little bit more about some of these quantitative methods and how you can use them to think a little bit about the redistricting process.
Thank you, Dr. M. Beth. Very interesting, very interesting. I think I want some more information on how you did all that. Yeah, those maps, very interesting. So thank you so much. Go ahead. Did you have something?
I was just saying thank you very much, and I'll put those links in the chat. So anyone who would like to contact me, I'd love to tell you more.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, we have Rene Martinez with the U.S. Census Bureau. And she's just going to tell you a little bit about the importance of the census and how it affects the districts and the numbers, even though she can't get into specifics. Rene, Ms. Martinez.
Yes, thank you very much, Roxana and Ruth, for inviting me to be here. I do have a couple slides, and I think Ruth is looking to pull those up. But while she's doing that, yes, the census is important to the discussion tonight, especially, but also don't want to lose sight of the fact that we want everyone counted so that we get our fair share of resources. And we always say that data equals dollars, as well as representation. So both Dr. Beth and Dr. Larson talked about apportionment data. If you were listening to our news release on April 26th, or any of the many stories that have come from that data release, apportionment data did come out on that day. And we found that Colorado did respond to the census. We know that predominantly people responded online, which again was the first year that we could do it online. The phones weren't widely used, and a few people did mail back their traditional survey, but 14.8% growth from 2010. As a result of that, and the next slide will show, we're getting that one house seat that you both spoke about. So again, due to the performance by the state of Colorado and people responding, we gained that house seat. Again, if you were reading any of the articles, you learned that many states lost population, and the result of that loss translated into the loss of house seats. You may have read an article or two, and there's been some talk about maybe it not being as cut and dry as this, but we learned on that day that New York lost a house seat by 89 people. And if that is accurate, it just is an excellent illustration of why everyone needs to participate, that we can't afford an undercount because we can't afford to lose those seats. I wanted to call your attention to the fact that on May 19th, which is just next week, we are having a redistricting update that the census is producing. I can later put in the chat the link to register for that. Please keep in mind that all of our services are public facing and free of charge, and we encourage you to go to census.gov. But of course, the question of the hour is redistricting data. And we don't have that as of yet. I think Dr. Larson mentioned that the pandemic was one of the issues. Also, there were natural disasters, change in scheduling. Had 2020 been a normal, so-called normal year, that redistricting data would have been released by March 31st. We're at about a 4-month delay due to, like I said, COVID-19, natural disasters, and fluctuating schedules. We had thought at one point that the census would end on October 31st. It was pulled back to October 15th. Also, a factor was enumerators. Folks were initially deployed right at the peak of the pandemic. Those folks are the people that go door to door leaving the census survey, because folks who have a PO box do not receive their survey at the PO box, but rather at their door. After a few days, those folks were pulled back and they weren't redeployed until mid to late June. So that too delayed all of the data. What I can tell you right now is the census is committed to releasing what they're calling legacy files on August 16th. Unfortunately, those files are not user-friendly. Apparently, they're a little bit difficult to decipher, and that user-friendly formatted data will not be released till September 30th. That's the absolute end last date that they'll be released, possibly before that, but no later than September 30th. So yes, I know that it's going to have an impact on not only Colorado, but nationwide on plans to redistrict, and you're depending on us for that. We can't speak to any pending litigation. We can't specifically talk to redistricting. We simply provide those numbers for all of you folks that are involved in that process. I do have my colleague Lily Griego on the line. She also works for the census. She's in the Denver area, and she is our congressional liaison, and that's why I asked her to be here. And I'd just like to invite Lily to say a few words.
Thank you so much, everyone. We're really glad to be with you tonight. I just want to take a step back and say thank you so much to the League of Women Voters, to the Pueblo NAACP. Statewide League of Women Voters was just an amazing partner during the 2020 census. And I did see that the mayor of Pueblo is also on, and I have a lovely photo from Rene and I traveling to meet with the mayor and secure our complete count committees down in Pueblo it was snowing in the end of spring 2019. So it was probably around 2 years ago. We are just really excited. I know Colorado's excited to regain or gain the congressional, as we will start to refer to it, Congressional District 8, CD8. We have folks at headquarters that are permanent census employees. Rene and I both left jobs that we love to come work on the 2020 census as our commitment to the US Constitution and to our commitment to the foundation of democracy. The folks in DC that work on this are economists, statisticians, and mathematicians, as we just heard from Beth. So these are folks that love the legacy files. They're going to be able to read them and not even hesitate for 1 second to understand what all of this data means. We look forward to the September release, and we do look forward to hearing what the redistricting commissions for Colorado come up with. So we are glad to be here. We thank you for everything that you did in 2020, and we look forward to the next step in this democratic process. And Rene is an amazing ally tonight. I'm just her note taker. So happy to be here with you all, and thanks so much, Rene.
Thank you, Lily. I'll turn it back over to you, Ruth or Roxana.
Okay, well, thank you, Rene. I just want to thank you for, working with us. We've been working since last year, and just getting the importance the census count out and people being counted. We let everybody know that everybody is worthy, everybody counts. And so that was our mission to our folks, to please complete that. And so I'm happy that we did do that. And I thank you for working with us. Next, we will have Jessica Shipley, who works in the Redistricting Commission office. And I will turn it over to Jessica.
Thank you, Roxana. Let me get this going. There we go. Apologies, because a lot of my presentation is what Tony said, so I don't want to do too much kind of going over the same ground. But I just, some basics of how things got started. And actually, I'm going to go to this slide right here. We have two different kinds of redistricting in Colorado, congressional and legislative. And in the past, the congressional redistricting was done by the state legislature, and legal challenges came up every single year. And generally the legislature was unable to come to an agreement about any sort of map. And so the state courts ended up drawing our congressional maps 3 out of the last 4 times. Legislative redistricting, so the state house and state Senate were both done by the Colorado Reapportionment Commission, which did not reapportion, it redistricted, so it was misnamed. And it had 11 members, and those members were appointed by the governor, the chief justice of the Supreme Court, and legislative leadership. And so in an effort to take a lot of the politics out of this, amendments Y and Z were introduced, and the voters passed them by an overwhelming margin, I think. This is just a little background information about what the differences are. In the Colorado, we have, obviously we have now 8 districts in Congress, and in the state legislature, we have 35 Senate districts and 65 House of Representative districts, and that is in the Constitution, so it will stay steady no matter what our population does. We just change the size of the districts each time we get more population.
Okay.
Tony said all this. Let's see. Here's our graphic that we love so much that Tony used it too, but it shows that it was a very complex process to get the commissions selected, and there was a lot of randomness in it, and eventually we got down to 2 commissions of 12 people each.
So I'm sorry I stole it from you, Jessica.
Okay. You did credit us, so it's fine. This just talks more about what Tony was saying, who the commissioners are, what the qualifications were, and the minimum qualifications for people who wanted to be commissioners, who applied to be commissioners. These are the people who were ultimately chosen to be commissioners. Half of them were chosen randomly, and the other half were chosen by legislative leadership if they are affiliated with a party, or the unaffiliated members were chosen by the judge panel that was responsible for choosing these commissions. The commissions are required to set up and adopt their own rules to govern themselves. We have finished that process for both of the commissions, so they both have a set of rules. And if you look on the website that I put in the chat several people ago, those are available there. So if you wanted to kind of look through them and see what the rules of operation are, they're available. There's a lot in amendments Y and Z about really doing everything in a public meeting and keeping the lights on, so to speak, and not doing anything in a smoky black back room with, you know, cigars and you know, that kind of thing, which I think was the perception for a really long time, and probably the reality as well. So all of the communications between staff and the commissioners or the public about maps and drawing maps needs to happen in a public meeting and not outside of a public meeting. So we can't talk to commissioners, we can't talk to registered lobbyists, or registered professional lobbyists, sorry, Tony, or legislators, anybody who might seek to influence our process of drawing these new maps as staff. So Beth kind of went through what these criteria are, and I think it's important to note that we've determined that these be taken in order, so of priority. So the last thing that we're allowed to look at is the maximization of competitiveness. So we have to look at all of these other things first, and then once we get those things fulfilled, then we can look at competitiveness. And Beth also said this, but you definitely can't protect incumbents, declared candidates, or a political party. And I think that's really important. And for that reason, as staff, when we start to draw a preliminary map that we will then take out and show on the road, we're going to start with an empty map and just draw what makes sense. And obviously we're taking in all the public comment that has come in so far, and will come in until 10 days before we have to have those maps due, which is, and I can tell you this now, well, this is the working date, June 23rd for the Congressional Commission and June 28th for the Legislative Commission. So those are the working dates to have that preliminary map done. And then we would take it out on the road on our little road show that we call it. And that's kind of what this particular slide talks about. So we'll do at least 21 hearings, and whether those hearings, all of those hearings will be done on the preliminary plan prior to getting the real census data, or if some of those hearings will be held after we get the real census data, is still up in the air. That's something both commissions are wrestling with and trying to decide what they're going to do with that. So, but when we do go out on the road, everything will be online. We'll be doing WebEx. Staff will travel to each of the locations. So if people want to come and testify in person, they're welcome to do that. This schedule will be put up on our website, and hopefully we'll do a lot of press releases and other kind of outreach so that all the communities that we're coming to will understand what's happening, what the process is, and how they can provide input. So after the preliminary plan is drawn, after we take that out on the road, we gather all of the input that we got while we were out on the road. We come back and we draft what's called the first staff plan. And we will use actual census data to do that. So we will not do that before the August 16th date that Rene was talking about, to deliver those legacy files. Our data analysts they're not user-friendly, but our data analysts can use that and put it into our software solution. So we will be able to start drawing staff maps on August 16th. Well, it'll take a day or two, but not much beyond August 16th. So we will, as I said, take all of the input that we got on the road. We will create staff plan number 1, and then we will have public hearings, definitely at the public or at the Capitol, which means, you know, a WebEx virtual meeting, but we'll at least have meetings there. And like I said, they're still trying to decide whether they want to go back out into the congressional districts and have additional meetings after we do that first staff plan. The commissioners can come up with, they can ask us to change up to twice, I guess, because the third staff plan ends up being the final plan. if the commissions do not adopt a final map, they can't agree on a map, then our third staff plan goes to the Supreme Court for approval. So they are definitely incentivized to come to some sort of agreement. Otherwise, staff is drawing plans, which I don't think anybody wants. I mean, we're very qualified, but yeah, we're nonpartisan and we don't care about politics at all. So there's notice requirements. There's the number of people who need to, or commissioners who need to approve something. And then the Colorado Supreme Court needs to do their work. And the timeline that we're working on right now is problematic because we're not going to get the data in time to get the maps to the Supreme Court by the deadlines that are set in the Constitution. And it will not leave enough time for the Supreme Court to get those maps back to us by the deadlines that are in the Constitution. So right now, there is a bill in the legislature. It's called Senate Bill 247. And that bill raises some questions about redistricting. And what they've done is a process called interrogatories. So what they did was pass a resolution, and that resolution asked certain questions. They filed that with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court agreed to consider those questions about deadlines, about what can be considered census data for our preliminary maps, and a couple of other things. So this week, the briefs are due on those interrogatories to the Supreme Court, and then oral arguments will be held on Monday. And if you go to the Colorado Court's website, there will be a live stream of those oral arguments. So if you're interested in hearing what's going on, it's, you know, a lot of legalese, I'm sure, but lots of legal arguments to be made about whether the commissions have autonomy and the authority to interpret the Constitution in the way that they feel is the right way, or if the legislature has some sort of authority to legislate redistricting while it's happening. So it's kind of an interesting little thing going on. So the Supreme Court needs to approve the maps, and then we have some time to, if they don't approve them, they return them to us with questions or concerns, and then we need to cure those concerns. So we have 12 days to get back to them. And then the Constitution requires us everything to be done by the end of December 30th. And the reason for that is they need to be filed with the Colorado Supreme Court or Secretary of State, so the Secretary of State can get this information out to county and municipal governments, and they can do their own redistricting. Here are the deadlines that are in the Constitution. This slide deck will be available for anybody who wants to see it, but most of these have been blown out of the water. So just know that. And one of the big things people ask me is how can they participate? And I think the key features of Amendments Y and Z were public participation and transparency. And I think as staff, we are committed to making sure, and as the commissions as well, they really believe in this as well, making sure that the public is heard. So we have a web form that you can submit public comments. You can email your comments. Once we get data, our mapping portal will be available, so you can actually draw and submit your own maps online through that portal. You could use one of the free programs that Beth put into the chat. So Districtor and Dave's Redistricting, which I don't think you put in there, but is another good one that is pretty simple to use. And you can submit that, or you can sign up to testify at a public hearing. So the commissions themselves are taking some public comment now. It's on the Legislative Commission is taking it every week at their public meeting that starts at 1 p.m. and you need to sign up ahead of time. The Congressional Commission is taking it on the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month. And again, you need to sign up ahead of time. Those meetings begin at 2 p.m. So you can just log on and say whatever you want to say for 3 minutes. So, and then when we go out on the road, there will be a lot of opportunity for people to testify at those meetings and tell us what you think about your communities of interest, about competitiveness, about whatever is important to you when it comes to representation. This is just kind of a little graphic about how to submit public comment. It's pretty easy. There's a drop-down menu that says public engagement. You can kind of follow what you need to do there. And Tony talked about communities of interest, but I think, you know, and this is the definition from the Constitution that's here at the bottom of the slide. It's subjective. It's very subjective. And so that's why we need to hear from the communities about what's important to them. And that's my time. So I'm probably over my time, but and I'm happy to take any questions at all.
I'm going to just jump right in here because we do have a question. Can you provide some more clarification and examples of communities of interest?
Sure. You know, in 2011, I worked on the Reapportionment Commission in 2011. And so we looked at communities of interest at that point. It wasn't a mandate in the Constitution at that time. It was just something nice that you could think about. And as we went around the state and on the road, we heard from a lot of people who had opinions about their communities of interest. And Tony mentioned some of the things, which are rural transportation districts are a big deal. Water basins are a big deal, school districts. But then I also think, for instance, Aurora has a very large Russian-speaking population, and those people really wanted to be drawn together because they thought it was important to have somebody representing them or people representing them that understood the needs of a Russian-speaking community. I think in one instance in Colorado Springs, actually, there was, I don't know if this is a pejorative term, and if it is, I'm really sorry, but it's the only one I know. There's a mega church, just a very, very large church with a large constituency. And those people wanted to be drawn together because they thought it was important that that one person understand their specific concerns and their values. So those are the kinds of things that we heard last time. And right now, the overwhelming thing that we're hearing is that rural populations want to be represented by a rural representative. I guess that's sort of redundant, but they want somebody at the state and the federal level who understands rural issues, farming and ranching and, you know, various other things. And so that's overwhelmingly the comment that we're getting at this point, is that people in CD2, CD3, and I know Pueblo, you know, has those same concerns, that urban areas and rural areas don't have the same interests and shouldn't be represented by the same person. Does that help?
I think so.
Yeah, I do too.
There's another question here. Will you describe the block level data and why it is important and necessary?
Sure. So Beth's slideshow had a graphic about the various levels of census data and and you know, we've got the country, the state, the county, the municipality. You've got down to the census tract, and the very smallest group of people that is counted is called a census block, and there are about 3,000 people in a census block, and it's the smallest group for which we have demographic data. And so we want to redistrict, and we're required to redistrict at that level. So we need data that comes all the way down to that level. And the real census data will have that level of granularity. What we are going to use for our preliminary plan, both commissions have decided to use a combination of it's called the American Community Survey, and it's done by the Census, and it's a 5-year estimate of all kinds of information. It replaced for those of you who are old like me, it replaced the long form census form. So some of us were lucky enough to get that every once in a while. And you'd sit there and fill it out for 20 minutes. So the ACS has replaced that, and it goes from 2015 to 2019. And it provides all kinds of data. So it's gonna be a combination of that ACS data, some data population data that the state demographer's office has up at the county and municipal level. And then something that the Census, thank you, Rene and Lily for doing this, has created what's called the map address file, I believe is what it's called. And it is every address to which a survey, a census form is sent. So it tells you where everybody lives. And so by taking those 3 sets of data, our data analyst, Louis Pino, is going to take those, and then he's going to benchmark that data up to the reapportionment number, which is the number that came out on, I don't remember, April 28th, I think. And then down, he's going to disaggregate it down to the block level. So it's going to be as close as we can get to replicating the PL 94-171 file that is going to come out on August 16th. But it's going to do it with estimated data. Estimated is kind of a weird term because it's actual data, but because it's coming from the ACS and because that's a rolling survey that happens over a 5-year period, it's not the most current data that we could possibly have. Did that get way too technical or boring? I'm sorry.
One question that I've heard asked is what happens to the candidacies of people who are running in Congressional District 3 who may no longer be in Congressional District 3 after this process? Does anybody know that?
Well, I mean, they either have to move or they have to drop their candidacy. Those are the 2 options. I mean, it is what it is. You have to live in your district. So that's why we're trying to get this stuff to the counties out to the county clerks as fast as possible so that they know where their precincts are, so people understand where they're living and what district they're in. But yeah, there's no good answer for that. It's not like, there's some sort of grandfathering in or anything like that, but.
Okay. There's a question here that says, how likely are we to end up in a similar expansive district after the redistricting? Is it okay or reasonable to allow slightly less dense representation for rural districts?
So I don't know, does anybody else want to take some of these questions? I don't mean to dominate, but I would say for congressional, it's a little bit harder because you have to have exact mathematical equality. For legislative districts, state legislative districts, you can have a 5% deviation between the smallest and the largest district. And so I think you'd have a better chance of having something that is less dense like that at a state level rather than at the federal level, because of that first key criteria in the Constitution is that you have to have mathematically equal population. So, and that's the issue, I think, with Pueblo. And I don't know what's going to happen at all, but I know that the concern is that, Pueblo is the only population center out in this area of just expansive rural land. And so I think I think it's harder to say what's going to happen with Pueblo, because are they going to end up going up with part of El Paso County? It seems like you either have to split El Paso County or Pueblo County. And those are the two big population centers in that area. And so that makes it complicated. I did not know that you didn't need to reside in a district to run for Congress. I really thought you did. Okay.
I also have a question though. It was no one from Pueblo was chosen to be on either commissions, and only one person from the congressional district was picked for either commission. And how can we make sure that our voices are heard here in Pueblo? And do you know when we would have the on-site meeting with the commission?
There is no schedule yet for the on-site meeting. So if you're talking about the Congressional Commission, it would be sometime between June 28th and August 16th. So it would be in the summer. We'll be giving as much notice as we possibly can once we come up with that particular schedule. We have a lot of things to consider. All the towns that the commissioners decide they want to go to in each congressional district, and what venues are available at what times, and are they appropriate? Are they accessible for people living with disabilities, or do they provide enough internet access or Wi-Fi access to broadcast the way we need to broadcast? So those are the kinds of things that we need to look at, and we'll be doing that over the next month and coming up with some sort of schedule. But you don't have to wait. I mean, if you have something you want to say, then I suggest putting it into the web form on our website, and know that the commissions are reading every single comment. I mean, it's not a matter of them getting inundated with comments. They're categorizing everything, reading everything, doing summaries for the other commissioners. It's really been an involved process. So please don't think that if you send something in writing that it's not being heard, because that's not the case.
Okay.
So also, as far as the representation and I think you said no one from Pueblo, it was done by districts, congressional districts. So it wasn't done by cities, and that's why Pueblo itself is not represented, but the district is.
Well, Pueblo is represented. Well, actually,
I
Commissioner
think she
Moskock,
said
where do you
one
live?
person.
I think, yeah, just one person, I think it was, for our whole district down here.
Yeah, and so the other person is from your congressional district, but not necessarily from Pueblo.
Right.
Okay, I'm just want to let you guys know that Michelle Gardner will be putting together that doodle poll, and she will, I hope, put it in here into this chat box pretty soon, and would ask everybody to go to that and enter your thoughts, your opinions on this doodle poll, and that will get to the commission. This is something she actually did originally for the Pueblo Chamber of Commerce. And so I asked her to do it for us too. So thanks a lot for that. Is there anything else? Any other questions? Roxanne, you want to wrap it up there?
Yeah.
If I may
Oh.
just say one more thing.
Oh, okay.
If you go to the League of Women Voters website, on the home page, and you look at legislative action, they have the Observer Corps for redistricting. We're putting together a group of people that will be watching the meetings with comments about what works and what doesn't work, and things that might help us change this for the future. But there's also a webinar there that has other kinds of comments in it. It has some of the same stuff that we talked about tonight, but there's also some other things in there that you might be interested in. So that webinar is available to anybody that wants to look at.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Larson, for that. I just want to thank, I think I'm on. I just want to thank all of our panelists for being here tonight, presenting this information. Great information. There's been some concerns, and just, you know, for people to just get this knowledge to know what's going on is an excellent tool. So we just want to thank each of our panelists for being here, and all those who tuned in, all our participants who tuned in to ask questions and just to listen to the information. We thank you so much for being here this evening. You could have been anywhere else. So we thank you for sharing your hour or so with us. I want to thank Ruth in particular. I reached out to her thinking that this would be an excellent forum to have for the people of Pueblo to get this information. And she was right on board and talked with her folks, and this became a reality. So I just want to thank everyone involved in putting this on this evening. And I'll let Ruth have the last word.
Okay, well, Tony mentioned the Observer Corps. You do have to be a member of the League of Women Voters to be in that. So if you would like to join, I will put our website in there so you can do that. If you would like to be part of that, there is the link to be able to join the League and be part of that Observer Corps. I want to thank the State League for their allowing us to use their Zoom and all of the assistance. This will be on the State League's YouTube site very soon thereafter, I hope. So I think that may be it. Beth Hendricks of the Colorado League for using Livingston Hogson for designing our flyer. And we're going to stay on for a few more minutes to let everybody get the links that they want. And if you want to save this, down at the corner of the chat, there's a little thing that says file, and it's got 3 dots beside it. If you click on those 3 dots, you can save the chat and have those links for your future reference if you want to do it like later or tomorrow or something. And I think that's it. Please get what information you need and what you want, and participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're finished a little early, but thank you. Good night. I'm trying to save it, Ruth, but I'm hitting those 3 dots, but I don't see the save. Oh, let's see. Oh. Okay.
Thank you for having me. This was amazing.
Oh, I'm glad you had a good time.
I love this stuff. As soon as we start getting survey results in, I will share whatever information I have with both of you. So.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm gonna hop off. If you need something else, please feel free to reach out and we will talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks.
Did you submit your map? I was gonna ask them about them taking the maps, but I guess is she already gone? Michelle gone?
No, I'm here. I'm here. Sarah presented to the Congressional Commission today. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I really hope they come down here so we can see. I think a group of us is better than sending questions. You know what that's
Yeah.
where I'm trying to get. So I hope they're going to be down in the southern part, they'll pick us to come down and
I hope so. 10 years ago, Pueblo was one of the areas that they went to. So I'm hoping that they'll kind of maybe follow that a little bit so that we can, because it's close for us too in Otero.
yeah,
So much closer to go to Pueblo than, excuse
then
me.
way up. Yeah. Up in your the district that you all are in, yeah. So hopefully they,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, it's good to see you. I'm gonna
Yes,
hop on.
thank you so much. Yeah,
Okay.
this was awesome. You guys did great. I loved it. It was so cool, so informative. So
Yeah,
thank you for meeting with us the other day.
yeah, me too. Thank you for doing that. Okay, bye-bye.
Do the rest of you have everything you need? I'm not hearing anything else, so I think we may end this soon.
I don't think. Ruth, I'm gonna try to put this on the NAACP's YouTube also.
Okay, good
I
luck
don't
with
know.
that.
Yeah, I'm have to ask Alan. Like I said, I was trying to just save it.